Attracting and retaining great talent is one of the biggest challenges international schools face today. But what truly makes a school a place where educators feel motivated and empowered? Today, I'm delighted to be joined by 6 leading voices from the sector for this roundtable discussion. We'll explore the key ingredients of a thriving school culture, from effective recruitment and onboarding to long-term career development, as well as processes and procedures that support retention and build trust more broadly. So it'd be great to start with some quick introductions. If everyone could briefly talk about their journey in education to date, as well as the educational context you're currently in, that would be fab. Barry, do you want to kick us off with that one, please?
Oh, I get to go first. Fantastic. I'm Barry. I'm a school principal here in Madrid. So we run an IB diploma-only college in the heart of the city. I've been in education for 25 years now. So China, Dubai, 10 years in Scotland, and also in the south with Epsom College. Looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say today and stealing some great ideas.
Thanks, Barry. Jeremy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jeremy Majeski. I'm the principal of Frankfurt International School's Wiesbaden campus. I have a small campus about 45 minutes away from the large main campus, about 225 kids, a champion for small schools. Prior to this, I was the elementary principal at the American School of Barcelona. And before that, I hail from the Chicago area where I was a teacher and a principal as well. So happy to be here.
Great to have you. Emma, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Emma Pickering. I'm Head of Learning Innovation over at Nadeen School in Bahrain. Prior to that, I had a long career with Anglia, working for them, and just learned so much through that experience that I've carried forward with me to today. And I think one of the things I'm really passionate about is well-being. So I'm excited to join this conversation today.
Amazing. Thanks, Emma. Yasir.
Hi everyone, my name is Yasir Abrar. I'm currently Deputy Head Teacher at Anglia International School, Dubai. Quite a big school. I've been here for 9 years and we have a enrollment of 3,100 students with around 500 staff. Primarily looking after learning and teaching, CPD, and driving the digital strategy, and a proud parent to 3 children as well who have been through the school since FS1. So hopefully seeing it from both sides of the coin.
Brilliant. Thanks, Yael. Yael, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm organizational architect. I assist organizational leaders with workforce strategy, organizational capability, staff engagement, and well-being, and enhancing culture. I've got 2 decades of experience in the international education sector. I started as a paying parent at the International Community School of Addis Ababa, where my kids attended while we were establishing a business there. Then I became a board member and a chair, school administrator, so I experienced a variety of roles within the school community. In recent years, I held a senior leadership role at International School Services, working with schools and school leaders to improve operation and culture, and with hundreds of educators and school operation professionals in terms of career development and professional development. So in the past year, after I left ISS, I continued my work independently as a consultant. In one of those projects, I met Mark and decided to co-found NexGen Talent to be able to bring simplified improvement services to help schools become the employer of choice and support their staff, so those would be motivated to support and motivate students. And I'm looking forward to this discussion and learning from all of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Yael. And Mark.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mark James. So I'm an educator. Currently, I'm leading the science department at an international school here in Zambia, and I'm in the classroom as well, teaching DP physics and MYP science. Before I became an educator, I spent over 15 years working internationally as an engineer in the construction industry. So I was leading and managing multidisciplinary teams of professionals internationally, predominantly around the Asia Pacific region. So yeah. Just adding on to what Yael said, since transitioning into education, I've kind of been reflecting on the differences on how people are treated between those 2 fields. On meeting Yael, I realized that's something that she is passionate about and also her area of expertise. So together we founded NexGen Talent with the goal of working with schools to enhance their educational outcomes by putting ethical employment and staff experience right at the center of their school success.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. And great to have you guys partnered for this discussion. So yeah, diving straight into our first question. What factors do you believe contribute to making educators and school employees more broadly feel truly valued and supported in a school environment? So looking at the macro perspective here, it'd be great to get your thoughts. Emma, could you kick us off with that one, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the most important thing to me is relational trust. I think leading with relationships first and at the heart of everything we do is really important. One of the things that we've done here at Nadeen is we've developed some leadership dispositions that we hold everybody accountable to. So instead of saying, what kind of leader are you? It's, this is the kind of leader we expect at Nadeen. And those dispositions include things like openness, questioning, inventiveness, being persistent, having emotional stability, being generous with our time, and having empathy. And I think just by holding everybody accountable to those leadership dispositions really supports that idea of relational trust. So those dispositions are grounded in relational trust. And I think something that's also really important is just that celebration and recognition of our colleagues. So today at Nadeen, we're celebrating Staff Appreciation Day, and that's all staff. It's not just our teaching staff, it's staff at every level and every layer of how people support the school. So that's our maintenance team, our security guards, it involves our cleaners, it's absolutely everybody that supports the running and stability of the school.
Jeremy, it'd be great to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, as I think about this question, the things that comes to mind is just the idea of being seen. I think, to be seen for who you are and the strengths that you bring to our organization. When I transitioned to my role here at Frankfurt International School, I asked all of our colleagues, staff and teachers alike, to put together a user guide for me. Who are they? What are their strengths? And one of my favorite pieces of that, actually, I wanted to know what their love language was. And by that, it was really asking them, how do you like to receive feedback? Is it a gift of time that you like? Is it a little note? Is it an act of service? And so I think, just really identifying those strengths, who they are, asking, what it is that kind of makes them tick, and supporting them along the way.
That's really cool. Love that. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Barry, what are your thoughts on that one?
I think I'm probably with Jeremy on this. I haven't described it as love language, but uptight Brit alert. I think listening and understanding is a vital part of what you do, and I think going to the idea of the individual, I think you miss so much if you can't empower individuals to lead or to be themselves in that environment. So I try to move towards a very hands-off approach, but with a supportive framework for them to kind of feed into and to discuss. So we're very much it's kind of corridor conversations, which I know many will criticize, but I think are a real way to take the temperature of a situation, of a day, of an environment. And I think coming back to what Emma was saying, I think understanding where the connections are and really kind of honing in on those, I think is an absolutely vital part of what you do as a leader, as a teacher, as a parent. So I think that's where I sit on the subject.
Yeah. And Mark, from your perspective.
So I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced this, as a teacher in an international setting, work is just a huge part of your life. You move your whole family, your whole life for the school. So knowing that the school has a good culture, it's just so important when you're making that decision around a new school, a new country, essentially a new life, because it is more than just that job. So as a few people have said, for me, it's about being seen as an employee. It's about knowing that your contributions are being seen and valued. Yes, it's about having the right tools and support systems, that freedom to be trusted to do what's best for your learners, but also equally that, you kind of feel that somebody is looking out for you, your growth, your professional growth, your career, and that your well-being actually genuinely matter to the people that you work with. I guess coming from the engineering background, what you're used to seeing is sort of fairly defined career pathways, mentoring, particularly early on in your career. There's processes in place, things are auditable, things are logical, transparent, etc. So for me, it was interesting to see that comparison when I moved into education, to see that that's not always the case. I think it's such an important thing especially if you're not feeling valued, because if you're not happy at your job, it's such a huge part of your life as an international teacher. As those little things start to chip away at trust, that can really have a big effect.
And Yasir, from your perspective there?
Yeah, it's just really echoing what has been said already from everyone else. Emma hit the nail on the head with relationships. I think you cannot get away from how important that is on a human level when you're having that two-way communication, whether it be through a survey, whether it be through a meeting, whether it be official or it's just a corridor conversation. I think sometimes we forget how powerful interactions can be. And when you take on some of the small things, and people might not assume that you remember a conversation that you've had with them, when you bring that back up, it sticks. So it's listening to staff, understanding how you can identify some quick wins. One example, just today, we normally have a secondary staff briefing on a Thursday morning. It's so heavy at the moment with assessments and exam times and preparation and marking. We cut the briefing and instead we put a breakfast on. So staff came into school thinking that there was going to be a briefing. Instead, they walked into a breakfast with some nice music in the background. And it was just a way for everyone to say, just decompress for 15, 20 minutes, get a drink, get something to eat, talk to each other, and hopefully just gives them a little bit of a boost as they go on about their day. I think it was Jeremy mentioned the onboarding process as well. Also the onboarding, and when staff eventually do leave you, that's really important to understand their perspectives on their experiences as well. As Mark has said, when things can grind on you a little bit, are they there? Have they had a voice to share their concerns? And when they're leaving the school for whatever reason that could be, do they have that opportunity to actually talk about the positives and some things that could be improved as well?
Mm. And just out of interest, have you seen a difference between what teaching and non-teaching staff need to feel valued? Just quickly on that one, Emma, you mentioned you really celebrate everyone within the school. Obviously, I'm sure you're all doing that as well. But yeah, just that particular example that you mentioned, have you seen a difference between what teaching and non-teaching staff, sort of what they respond to best?
Sure. I mean, I think just picking up on some of the other comments, everybody is individual. And I think it's understanding what every individual needs. One teacher might need something very, very different to another teacher. And I think we have to set up structures within the school where everybody can feel heard and seen. And I think it's through those structures that we begin to build those relationships and we build that understanding of what everybody needs. And I think I'm a big fan of the term, everybody gets what they need rather than everybody gets the same. And I think that applies at all levels. That applies to our learners in school, that equity rather than equality statement. And it applies to our learners, but it applies to our colleagues as well. Like everybody doesn't need the same thing all the time. So it's trying to create structures where we have like lots of different things on offer, for example. So we have started recently breathwork sessions at Nadeen. And not everybody needs those, but the people that do come along are the people that need it. And it's just been really interesting to see, who wants to go along to netball training as opposed to who goes along to breathwork. So it's providing lots of different opportunities so that everybody gets what they need.
Yeah. And the next question, looking at a particular example, I know we've touched on a couple here, but is there one that really sticks in people's minds in terms of a successful initiative or practice that really positively impacted staff retention and morale, maybe more broadly? Is there something that really stands out, Jeremy, from your perspective?
Yeah, no, as I thought about this question, I think the feedback that I have received from staff over the last couple of years, one of the most powerful things we did is we talked about mistake making for an entire year. And I bought a book for every staff. I've got it here on the side. It's called Risk, Fail, Rise by Colleen Cruz. And it's a teacher's guide to learning from mistakes. And it was an incredible launch pad to talk about, why we make mistakes, what mistakes are good, what mistakes are bad. And, just really kind of opening up the conversation to let's not all pretend to be perfect. And I think when we started talking about that over the course of months and a full year, you almost felt this sense of, this release of pressure. And I know so many people appreciated that, and this idea that they can be part of a culture where they can innovate, make mistakes, and it'll be okay. So I think that's something that I will carry with me, whatever school that I move on to next, is this idea of let's make mistakes together and not feel like we have to be perfect.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'll put a link in that. Risk, fail, rise, is that, Jeremy?
Risk, fail, rise, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, without failure, there is no progress, right? To create an environment where they feel comfortable in doing that, and that's essential. Brilliant. Barry, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's from my side, it's about organization, and it's about creating an environment in which your team are going to thrive. So it's talking to everyone. So we meet 3 times a week as a whole staff body, and that's run by different people at different times, depending on what the priorities are, making sure we're understanding each other. not just me understanding, but everyone understanding. So you have to have a big cross-reference. We're a small team, so we're only about 40 teachers, but having a cross-reference across everything that we're doing, and then planning and making sure that we're taking into account everything when we do plan. And absolutely, we don't always get it right. And in fact, if I haven't made a massive mistake by lunchtime, then I'd probably wake up from this weird dream. I think, from that, what you do is you create an environment in which everyone's feeling more comfortable with what they're doing, and you're actually listening to people on a day-to-day basis, and that's where constant communication comes in. And from that, once you have an understanding of where everyone's coming from, you can then see where the opportunities are to give people chances to take on whole school projects. And that's the really big issue, I think, for young teachers especially, is if you have an understanding where everyone's at and you understand where your organization is at, you can see where the talent is, and you can start to suggest how people can take on elements that will impact what you're doing, but also impact their career, and move them forward with the experience that they need to take on bigger and better jobs. I never cry when people leave, as long as they leave for something much better and bigger. So my job as a school leader is to make that happen.
Mark, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, people have mentioned systems and processes. I think it's all about whatever processes you have. It's about how they make you feel. If you feel like you're just another replaceable cog in a machine and people are ticking boxes, that's probably not going to be a great experience. So it's things like having meaningful evaluation processes and actual genuine discussions about people's career progression, and feeling that your contributions are seen and valued. I love Jeremy's discussion on blame. We used to have that in the construction industry. We used to call it a blame-free environment. It's like you don't point the fingers as long as you learn from it, and it's a safe space to go forward, because if you don't talk about these things, they don't get talked about, and that becomes a bigger problem. There's the usual things, like any sector, like not wasting people's times with unnecessary meetings. I think authentic staff social connections is a really important one as well. They have to be meaningful. It shouldn't be forced. And yeah, making the school a safe place, I think, is a super important one. A safe environment where people feel they can raise their concerns. It's okay to make mistakes. I think that is absolutely super important to build a healthy school culture.
Yeah, that resonates. Wasting time with unnecessary meetings. That is a bit, nothing more.
All relate to that one.
Yeah, brilliant. Yasir, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, just really picking up on what Barry said as well in terms of CPD and recognition of staff. Nord Anglia's got quite a nice tagline of growing your own, and we put on regional middle leadership programs and senior leadership programs all the way up to aspiring principals. And we, as we've grown as a school, kind of identified the next crop of talent from a middle leadership and a senior leadership perspective. The regional programs only really take on 1 or 2 candidates per academic year. So a lot of the feedback that we were getting was that they're ready for the next step internally, but they want the tools to really make that jump. So we put together a program over a 12-month period, which was called the Aspiring Middle Leaders Program and the Aspiring Senior Leaders Program. And so us as a leadership team, we identified a process of what skills were required that we could really hone into our context of the UAE, the inspection frameworks, around the school improvement plans, and how we could then give them a voice. So it culminated in a project. We had 5 sessions across the academic year, and it really gave them, in terms of feedback that we received, an opportunity to take themselves out of being the person who everybody comes to for questions, and also then allowing them that environment where they can ask the questions and they can learn, and then put some things into practice from a leadership perspective. So in terms of how we've been able to develop staff, a number of them went on to get the next job that they were after. And it was always nice in interviews where they could call on some of the experiences that they've had. So it's a little bit of a full circle moment.
Yeah, that sounds like a really, really great program. Emma, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I thought about this question multiple times when I was kind of looking at the question, and I thought about a lot of the things that have been said already, things around like inset and how you deliver that inset. And then when I started thinking about inset and that kind of beginning of the year, I started kind of pedal backwards and think about all of the things that we do that are so important to retention. And it really begins in the interview process. And I think that interview process is so important. And we start our interview process with an informal, where any prospective candidate can just ask questions about life in Bahrain and ask questions about the school. And I think that starts that connection early on, but it also supports a person to think about, like, is this going to be the school for me? Because getting that match right is just so important, because if it is a mismatch, that's where you start to have these issues around retention. And I think it just starts with that initial connection. And once that connection's been made, and once we move then into a more formal process and we put that job offer out, it's like, what do we do next? We need to keep that connection going right up until that person gets on the aeroplane to come here, or wherever it is they're coming from. And it's things like, oh, maybe they have a pet to move and they just need some support with that. And it's like, again, everybody needs something different. So it's always like analysing and assessing what people need and supporting them through that journey, that pre-journey, before they even get here. And then once they arrive, we always do some work with our new colleagues around cultural adaptation, because I think that is something that's kind of quite misunderstood, especially for people who've been like new to international education, or even people that have worked in it a while and they're moving on to a new country. That cultural adaptation can be quite critical, and supporting people through that process during the first term and into the first year is really important. So we always do a session during our early inset with our new colleagues around cultural adaptation, and we walk them through that cycle and what that's going to look like almost through the first term and the first year. And that's helped people to reflect and go, oh yeah, I see where I'm at right now. I'm definitely in that cultural shock phase right now, and I need some support. And it's recognizing when colleagues need support and putting that support system in place for them and really guiding them through that first year. And it's not just like cultural adaptation to the culture of Bahrain, it's cultural adaptation to the school and the school culture, because every school is different, and we have to kind of guide them through that school culture as well, and those practices and policies and procedures that are in place.
Yeah, I suppose creating an environment where they can feel like they can say, oh, I don't feel comfortable right now, or I'm a bit shocked, or I'm not really quite sure how to behave in this particular environment, or yeah, whatever it might be, is absolutely essential. So yeah, it sounds like you're doing an incredible job there.
I just want to add two quick examples that I used in two different schools. One reflects the question before, maybe about the operations staff in school. So usually, or not usually, in many cases, the mission and vision of an educational institution is not very clear to those who work in operations, because it's not translated immediately to their tasks, day-to-day tasks. So what I've done in one of the schools is just broke down the work with them on breaking down the mission and vision, and it was really rewarding to see at the end of the process how they could see how their work connects to learning and how they are contributing. So this is maybe an exercise that you can all do with the non-educators or operation staff. And the other one is someone mentioned meetings, and a lot of the complaints that I get when I come to schools is that the meetings are endless and not with actionable items. And one of the things I think that we're not doing, and not just in education, when we meet at work, is we're sharing what we're doing, but we're not sharing, we're afraid to share our challenges. And one of the things, if you structure the meeting correctly and you assign people to speak about their challenges and bring them as an agenda before the meeting to the team and say, these are my challenges, how can you help me to solve them? And you have really a timer, you have someone who leads so it's very, very structural. It just works well, and there are results that I've seen that are just fantastic. So that was two little things that I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Aligning that mission and vision from day one, right? And how you actually live and breathe that is essential, because, you know, a lot of schools could say a lot of things, and then actually the reality can be quite different. So yeah, that's a great point. And in terms of my next question, looking at this balance between accountability and autonomy, so it's that constant balance, isn't it? And it might depend on the individual themselves, what they need. But how can schools balance this effectively to empower school employees and encourage innovation more broadly? Yasir, it'd be great to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think this one's a really important one to look after the admin staff as well. A lot of times their involvement and their impact can go slightly unnoticed because they're not at the front face of schools. So where we're talking about the accountability and autonomy, sometimes they shout out to the security guards or the cleaners or the facilities teams that could sometimes work 24 hours a day behind the scenes to make sure things are as they are. That autonomy for them and the accountability for them is really important for us to recognize and see how impactful they are in the schools. And then when you bring it over to a school system, if you like, I think having shared expectations, understanding what is the school for in terms of its mission and vision, what is the ethos of the school, and then you can hold everybody to that account with a clear appraisal process as well. And that process has to be built, again, from both perspectives. There has to be honest feedback that is given as well. And if they can have some element of collaboration towards things like the school improvement plan or the self-reviews, then you're building up a structure where everyone feels involved. And if you get that sort of buy-in, and you can get it at a majority scale, then generally schools will start to improve and move forward. And in the same way, when some course correction needs to occur, that's important as well for leaders to be able to hear that and understand what can be developed. One of the things that we did was introduce what we call a staff pledge. So we have a student pledge, a parent pledge, and a staff pledge. And it essentially lays out some really simple messages in terms of who we are expected to be in the building, who we are expected to be as people, and therefore what we expect from each other in terms of respect as well. So some simple things like that, if you put them in place and you keep coming back to it, it shouldn't just come and go, then I think you can set a culture where everyone feels like they're a part of it and you're driving towards the same mission, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Yasir. Just out of interest, shouting out non-academic staff, security guards is so important, isn't it? To keep everyone feeling like they're part of one mission. And just out of interest, in terms of the channels you use for that, is that in a newsletter or how do you actually practically do that? Just out of interest.
All sorts. So, like, for example, when we have Ramadan here, we have a big drive from the community. So a lot of our bus drivers, our security facilities, they could be fasting. And while they're fasting, they could be helping out with traffic and things like that. So we have a series of fridges that we put out across the school, and parents and staff, essentially, we stock the fridges and that's for them. So when it is coming to the end of their day, they can take the food away, they can take it to their families. That's one aspect. We put together, like we've got a cricket game coming up against the security and facilities team in June. So we put on things for them where it's listening to them, it's recognizing them. And then, just the simple things, sometimes walking down a corridor and having a conversation with a cleaner or a security guard, you can see their body language change because they should, as we all know, be given the same respect as you would give to anyone else. Knowing people's names, it's just all the relationships that we've said earlier that you really just try to hone in on and just be good people at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. Jeremy, your thoughts on that one in terms of balancing accountability and autonomy?
I think where I've seen success in this is developing common agreements. I mean, I heard, us talking about vision, mission, that kind of comes from the top and that kind of is the umbrella under all of this. But what I've seen is oftentimes, and especially teachers, they want some guardrails oftentimes to put on, where's the flex and where do I have to stay true? An example of that is, we shifted our literacy, our program and our approach a couple of years ago here. And we took probably 6 months to come up with some common agreements. We looked at research, we looked at what other schools are doing. We developed a beautiful document that talks about our pedagogy, our curriculum, our resources, things that we're using. And now that we have that in place, now that's what we can hold people accountable to, because we all had a voice in kind of shaping that. We all agreed where that was going to go. So I think where things can get some a little bit hairier, a little frustrating in schools is when you don't have those agreements in place. And it's somebody coming from the top or a team leader or another staff member saying, hey, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. but you haven't agreed upon that. And so, even after my 4th year here, we're already talking about a new set of common agreements around some other areas in the school for next year. And so I think they have to be constantly revisited and just be thinking about, okay, what's tight and what's loose. And I think that once people have that clear idea, they know where to go.
Brilliant. Yael, what are your thoughts on that one?
My view is always a little bit different, maybe different, because I see many schools, but I think balancing accountability, and I've heard a lot of things that are speaking to the same thing that I would say here, but balancing accountability and autonomy starts with clarity and trust. And when people don't take risk, people don't take risk when the structure around them feels unsafe. And in many schools, the structure puts too much power in one person's hand. So if your principal is your manager, your HR, your PD gatekeeper, the one who approves your leave, and also the ones who give you appraisal, what happens if this relationship don't work well? Where is the buffer? Where is the safety net? We need clear processes, fair systems, and better power distribution. Employee needs someone else to turn to. Could be a people and culture lead or another trusted person in the system, not just their direct manager. And as for innovation, when it happens, it must be backed by system to embed the change. Otherwise, it's seen as a failure, and no one wants to be associated with a failure, even though that's how we grow and learn, right? So if there is no support system in place to lead for success, no one will take the risk. And the truth is that schools often overlook roles that help move projects forward. There are talented educators who could do this, connecting ideas, supporting change. One of the common argument is, we have silos, we can't work with silos. So someone to liaison between these silos. But we currently don't have those career pathways in education, and that's a big gap.
Yeah. Barry, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with what people are saying. I think you have to trust teachers far more than I think it happens in many larger organizations. I think I'm coming from a very small school environment, so knowing everyone personally, talking to everyone, moving kind of forward with those individuals and building that relationship and making sure it's strong and the responsibility in the relationship is on me. I think it comes very much from personal. And I think I agree with Yael to the point where, you do have a danger sometimes if you place power too much in one person. So diverse power distribution is how we tend to operate here. And coming to that point of no fault, innovate, report, come back to a common understanding is really vital for everyone. But I think when you come to accountability and autonomy, you can't do things to make people feel seen. You have to do things that mean people are seen and they are having an actual impact. I think sometimes when we put these ideas in place, what we're doing is we're trying to make people feel better, when the reality is if we actually just focus on being better and I've got 40 teachers here, which is at least 80 degrees, at least 500 years of experience. Imagine having a 500-year-old colleague and all of that wisdom and all of that experience to go and talk to and bring to bear on the issues that you're facing. I think the more you engage people with that and you're creating meaningful development within your institution, the more people are going to feel happy with what they're doing, and you're going to retain people and you're going to create a happy staff room. I think I wince every time when I hear the word feel. It's like, no, let's turn it into do. So that's where I am on this.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Barry. Emma, your thoughts on that one between
accountability? Thank you. Just listening to Barry, I think I sit somewhere on the side of Barry with this, and I like the concept of trust over compliance. But that's within a framework. So we have to operate within a framework. And that framework comes from that philosophy, that vision that we have for the school. And once you've got that solid philosophy and vision for the school, and it becomes lived and not just laminated on a wall somewhere, you then have to work through that accountability to that. Okay, so everybody's accountable to that. This is what we say we do. So everybody is accountable to that. And the way that we hold people accountable to that is through our policies. So we need to make sure that our policies are really clear. We need to make sure that the procedures that sit underneath those policies are really clear. And then also that that's happening at the practice level. And that's where the accountability side comes in. Like, is what we've said in the policy happening at that practice level? And I think Then if it's not happening, why is it not happening? Have we not been clear? Who's responsible? Do I need to be more clear? Clear is kind, as I mentioned earlier. And then if it does come down to the point of having a difficult conversation with somebody, we go back to those 7 leadership dispositions. We approach it with questioning. We approach it with empathy. We approach it with generosity, but in a way that we can then go, okay, well, actually, it just seems that you have misunderstood policy here. Let's go back to what the policy says. Let's look at that together. Let's redirect and let's get going again. So I think if you've got all of that clarity and structure in place, you've always got something to hold people accountable to. And then the wheels don't come off the bus. It's like the systems are all in place and everybody's moving in the same direction with the same purpose.
Yeah. And my next question, that leads me really nicely onto that one. In terms of transparent leadership, clear is kind, like you just said, and, or maybe there are different types of leadership styles that work at different moments as well for different people. So just touching on what role transparent leadership in particular plays in fostering that strong culture. Jeremy, I'd love to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think as I was thinking about this question, I'm going to be short. So I'm going to be, well, yeah, duh. I think transparent leadership does play a huge role in building a strong school culture. Your teacher and your faculties, your staff, you want them to know the why. You want them to understand what's happening behind the scenes, where we're headed, what's going on, where we're going. And an added layer to that is also what we're struggling with as leaders, being transparent about that. This is a tough year, because of X, Y, and Z, and this is what we have to deal with. And I think the more that we're open and transparent as leaders, the more our colleagues will be as well. And that can only support a positive school culture, I believe.
And just out of interest, Jeremy, I mean, obviously we all went through a pretty traumatic time a few years ago with COVID. Did that really amplify the importance of being transparent, do you think, just out of interest in terms of leading through that crisis?
I do think so, because there was change coming left and right, and coming all ways. And I think that the way that you deal with change is being able to understand the why. We're not shifting from this week to next week to this week, with different ideas and different different directions. But we have to do that is because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that COVID, coming out of COVID, it helped us realize the importance of making sure that we explain that why behind it. I think it's through change management, it's through some of those crises that we find the best of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Barry, your thoughts on that one in terms of transparent leadership?
Yeah, I'm with Jeremy. It's you have to be transparent with what you. I think there are times when you can't be. Before I go on to that, Emma, lived but not laminated. I love that, and I'm stealing it. I think the one thing maybe to add to that is where you can't be transparent, and you're then coming back to, look, this is what we can talk about. This is what we can't talk about. So, and that's especially when you come to certain aspects of education, and that comes back to, have you explained how we operate? Have you explained how we run the school? Have you explained, all of the different ramifications of, this is what we can tell, this is what we can't, often, private details and things like that. Or if there is a, child safety issue, and because sometimes people can be quite, what's going on there? So it's important to be, truthful and honest up to the point that you can be. So I think to take it, to that extent, there are things that you can't do, but in everything else, absolutely involve everyone, because your staff are going to win it for you.
Yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts on that one in terms of transparent leadership.
I agree and disagree. I think, and I'll touch what Barry just said about the difficulty of sharing some stuff. So I think looking at it a more systematic way, and where you can share, that's wonderful. The why, that's wonderful, and maybe should be shared, but it's about building predictable, positive systems that people can rely on. So it's about the definition of transparency. And yes, of course, it contributes to a strong school culture. But I'm not convinced that we have to follow the why. I think in schools with strong culture, staff know how decisions are made, where to raise concerns, and who is responsible for what. But when that structure is missing, people end up operating in uncertainty. And that slowly erodes trust and morale. There's actually research about this that backs this up. When employees don't have clarity in how power and decision flow through an organization, it leads to what's called perceived organizational injustice. and it's based on a perceived organizational justice, the theory. And that's one of the biggest cause for burnout, turnover, and disengagement or lack of motivation in our context. So transparency isn't just about having open conversation. It needs it needs really infrastructure behind it. Clear grievance or conflict resolution, like I like to call it, processes, well-defined roles of each leader, each employee, and leadership structure where power is shared, not just held by a few. And that means rethinking who we see as leaders as well. In many schools, leadership is still mostly tied to educational roles, but true leadership also includes those who run the operation, HR, finance, facilities, and others. The professionals are often labeled support staff, but that term can mean listening and sometimes insulting. It suggests that they're secondary when in fact they're operational backbone of the school. So I think all of those things need to be out there and spoken about. Leaving them out of key decision isn't just a simple oversight. It's showing that we're still using a limited and outdated view of leadership. And if we take just the HR, for example, when HR is seen as a strategic partner, not just as an admin support, like in many schools, it gives staff another level of protection, like I said before, beyond direct manager. It helps make sure that the power isn't concentrated in the hands of one or two people, and it offers a safe, respectful space where issues can be raised and handled properly. This is transparency when you have a process like that, when they know where to go. This is especially important in schools where principals often hold a lot of power. They're responsible for hiring, managing staff, like I said before, resolving conflict, and they're often expected to do this without a structured HR support. That can lead to inconsistency, favoritism, and burned out for the leaders and for staff alike. So sharing the power with the HR doesn't weaken the role of principal, it's strengthening it. And I've seen it a lot in many schools. It creates accountability, builds consistency. So it's about making leadership more balanced, fair, and sustainable. So in the end, transparent leadership isn't just about, it's a value, it's structure in my view.
Yeah. That's interesting. It resonates with me personally as well, having worked in other businesses, also a bit about outside of education as well. The importance of having that structured HR process is that security, is that safety for employees to go to, without maybe the CEO or the head of the company holding all the power as well. So yeah, that's really, really great. And predictable and positive systems. That's a really great way of putting it. Yasir, I'd love to get your thoughts on that one in terms of transparent leadership.
Yes, it's been brilliant to listen to everybody's feedback on it. And I guess from our perspective, we've had to put the structures in place as we've grown. So a lot of what Barry's saying resonates with me when the school was really small and we could fit in a classroom and have, secondary staff briefings or get, a slightly bigger room for whole staff meetings. And now you're operating at a scale where if you include everybody, we're at, just over 500 members of staff. So where you want to build that transparency and where you want to get messages across, and then you need, large organizational teams, essentially schools within schools, to come on the journey with you. I've always felt that the channels of communication have to be very, very clear, and you want to be able to deliver a message and give people the why, but also then let them understand how they are part of that journey and how they can also develop their areas as well. As a senior leader, I think the visibility and integrity that you hold, whether it be from a line management perspective or just be who you are as a person, I think that's really important as well, because they should be able to reflect and see some qualities in you that allow them to trust you when you don't have to be the micromanager or be the person who's checking in on things. You can just give people the autonomy and allow them to have that voice with you. So I think it's a lot of taking what everybody said. And I think each individual organization will do this in their own way to get the outcome they desire. And a lot of it is personal to us as leaders as well.
Yeah, thanks, Yasir. Emma, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think there's a lot of things there that resonated with me, but I think at our school, our mascot is a wolf. And it's very pertinent to us that we have this mascot of a wolf, because what it symbolizes for us is that the strength of the pack is the wolf and the strength of the wolf is the pack. And that's everybody. I think there's been a lot of conversation today about we're not just talking about our academic staff, we're talking about everybody that is part of that functioning and running of the school. So that a mascot is a real symbol, and we have that as visuals all around the school, and we come back to that thought process whenever we're trying to make decisions. So sometimes, yes, sometimes senior leaders have to make decisions and we just have to filter them down, and that's where the kind of clarity breeds confidence comes in. But sometimes when we want to involve people in decision making, I think that actually is a really important part of the process. So when we've created a policy, it's then, okay, we've created this new policy, or we've amended this policy. We would like your feedback. So it's bringing people into the conversation. So we recently changed our feedback policy, for example. So we took what we had to our teachers and we said, what's your feedback on the feedback policy? And they said, oh, actually, we want to do this with it. So we took their feedback in, we redrafted, and we took it back again. So I think when we are changing policy, we've had to do that a lot at Nadeen recently because of the growth of the school. It's always to say, where can the input be? How can we involve people in that conversation? Are we going to build this policy out of a committee, for example? So at the moment we're working on our wellbeing policy and we have a committee working on that. Are we going to write something and put it out to staff and then get their input? So it's making those decisions, but making sure that people feel involved. And I think the second thing I'd like to add to the discussion around this question is about just that open door policy. So somebody feels like they can come to you and say, you know what, I've read the new policy and I've had this idea, or I've read the new policy and I'm not sure I 100% understand or agree with it, and I'd like to have some input. And I think building on that, it's then going, okay, well, let's look at it. Maybe we have made a mistake with that. Maybe that does not work at the practice level and we need to change it and we need to amend it. So I think it's making things that kind of two-way process as much as it possibly can be.
Yeah.
I love the mascot idea.
Yes, yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, guys. And then that leads me to my final question. So in a world where it is increasingly more critical to stand out from the competition, looking ahead, what initiatives or cultural shifts do you believe are most needed to make schools the employer of choice more broadly, obviously especially pertinent in very, very competitive regions, maybe like the UAE or certain cities in Southeast Asia? It would be great to get your thoughts on that final question. Barry, if you'd like to kick us off with that.
It's pay and opportunity. Sorry, as much as I might want to throw donuts at people every Friday and make them feel warm and fuzzy. Pay and opportunity is what you got to remember. Teachers are some of the smartest people on the planet, and they're not daft. And what they want is they want to work with great people. They want to work with people who have a vision, with people who understand why they're doing it, and they want to understand why we're doing it. Teaching is the best job anyone can do. You can change a person's life every single day through your action or inaction. It is a massive responsibility. And if people want to go into this profession, they want respect, they want to be involved, they want to understand how they can advance, and they want opportunities to do that, and they want to be paid properly for it. So I agree with a lot of what people have said about kind of how we institute organizational structure and we create these things within our schools. But at its heart, that's where I'm at with this, and that's how we need to change.
Yeah. Jeremy, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think we need to take seriously the idea of wellness and belonging in schools. I agree with Barry. I think this is an incredible opportunity, a job, a profession, vocation. And, in order to keep people in this, we really need to take that, incredibly seriously. We need to talk about balance. We need to talk about, times when we can shut off when we need to shut off. We need to talk about times when we can show up as who we are and let that be okay. And so I think too much, schools have put lip service on some of this. And I think especially given the political climates around the world right now, I think we need safe spaces that, just allow us to be and have those signs all over the place where you feel that sense of belonging because somebody cares for you, somebody's asking about you. So I just think that we can't underestimate that right now.
Yeah. Yael, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've heard before already with Barry and Jeremy. So if we want schools to become employer of choice, we need to rethink how we define success. So not just in learning outcomes, but in how we treat the people who make those outcomes possible. So 3 things come to mind. First, we need to make employment predictable. That means clear job structure, consistent policies, fair processes. It's all the things that we've said in previous questions. And that should apply to all staff And I'm saying it because I've seen where there are two systems for the operation and for educators. So that need to be consistent. People stay where they feel the rules are transparent and fairly applied. So second, career development needs to go beyond professional learning. It's about building real pathway, recognizing skills, and giving people the chance to grow into new roles, even if those roles do not exist yet. There are positions in schools that employees can not grow from, like, you know, an accountant or a teacher. If someone doesn't want to go the next step to leadership, but they can grow horizontally and develop other skills they have to support the school and be able to feel progress in their career. There are ways to do this well. And third, I think school needs to focus on cultural safety, like Jeremy said. That's not just about inclusion statement. It's about how power is shared, how feedback is handled, and whether people feel safe to raise concerns without fear. These shifts aren't just nice to have. They're essential if we want people to see schools as places where careers can thrive, not just providing jobs to survive.
Yeah, thanks, Yael. Yasir, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I guess it's the commitment that we make to people. It's the commitment that we make to understand every individual. And where we're talking about being an employer of choice, our market here is very, very competitive. You know, you've got teachers who can access inspection ratings and school ratings and leaderboards and all of this type of stuff. But that can mean nothing from the outside. But it's when you get actually talking to people, when you're getting to understand what has been put in place before, some, you know, clear examples of how people have been able to develop, how you're aiming to retain that top talent and what you do for them, then it comes to that culture of belonging and a shared purpose. And I think sometimes where a good school, it will be talked about when you're not even aware of it. You know, and conversations will take place to say, you know, there's people who we know in that space who have developed, say, good things, parent feedback, student feedback, all of that should come together. And we really try to understand what we're doing right now is very traditional. And in the future, are there going to be some initiatives where we start to move away from the traditional aspect of what we know to be our roles, and how our schools, or the best schools, if you like, looking to adapt to that? You know, are the leaders are aware of how they need to change some of the dynamics and the traditions and the cultures that have existed? Because I feel the next 5 to 10 years, we will see a change, a quite marked change in the way we do things. And is it going to be schools that will almost put their flag down in the sand over here and say, this is us and we're going to try and do something different? Or are we just going to continue to do the same thing and think that's going to work as well? So I think it's a pivotal point at this stage to really understand what is going to make schools different, and therefore what will make parents want their children to go to that school and have that opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Emma, your thoughts on that last question there?
Yeah, I mean, we've been having a lot of conversations in our senior leadership around like the blue zones of the world. And it's like, that's the kind of culture that we want to create here at Nadeen. And it's like, we've been having conversations like, what are the little things that we can do to create that kind of culture? And I think one of the things that I think we always forget about is just making leaving school on time being the norm. So it's just the norm that we leave school on time. You know, working parents, teachers that have children in the school, it's okay for them to leave at 3:30 when the doors close, and there shouldn't be any judgment around that. We all know that people probably open their laptop later. So it's just trusting people to manage their own workflow and just making that leaving on time being the norm. We're not there yet. I know I'm not a very good role model of this, but that's definitely something within the culture that we want to create.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, guys, really appreciate that. That's absolutely fantastic. That brings us to the end of the discussion. And just very quickly, I think what you mentioned there about, Yael, about how do you help teachers feel like they're progressing without necessarily having to move into management roles? That's a really, really interesting question. I think we should probably look at a future discussion. Thank you for sharing that. And guys, awesome. Mark, Yael, would you mind just rounding us off and talking a bit about NexGen and the kind of work you're doing with schools, how you're supporting international schools at the moment? That would be fantastic. And then we'll round off the discussion.
Mark, do you want to go ahead?
We founded NexGen relatively recently, and it was sort of born out of lived experiences of teachers around the world. We've gone out and we've done our own research to, talk to teachers and find out what they experience. It's kind of born out of, actually initially came out from my experiences actually going through the international school recruiting cycle and going through that process and just thinking, gosh, as an engineer, you're sort of drawn to solve problems, and you think if this many people are having this kind of experience, there must be a better way. So it's kind of born out of that, and talking to Yael, who's, this is her expertise, it kind of blossomed into a more holistic thing, looking at the whole employment cycle. So what we're working on are 2 endorsement schemes that actually recognize the schools that are doing really, really great work in the space, and also seeking to support schools that would like to do better. And so that's what we are working on at the moment. Yael, do you want to add more to that?
Yeah, it's the ethical employer, which encompasses principles and standards and indicators where schools, so we develop a whole framework where schools can go through and also learn in a way 12 modules of things that are related to those standards. We're looking to start our pilot in September, and we've got already 1 school registered, and we're looking for another 4 to 5 schools that will go through the process, and then we'll, try to make it better for the rest of the schools to follow. The other scheme is the respectful recruiter. It's a smaller scheme. It has, again, principles, standards, and indicators, and it's all on our website. So if you're interested to look at that and interested to talk to us, just call us.
Yeah.
And we'll be happy to help.